May God's divine blessing be upon your day and your entire week. Welcome to our deep dive. So, imagine this. You've spent like a whole year bragging to literally everyone you know about this massive charity project that your hometown is pulling off.
Oh boy, setting expectations high.
Right. You've hyped it up so much that neighboring cities got inspired. They actually started raising their own funds based entirely on your momentum.
It's like a viral movement.
Exactly. But now the deadline is here. The auditors are pulling into your driveway. And you suddenly realize the bank account is completely empty. Like the money isn't there at all.
I mean, that would be absolute unmitigated panic. The social fallout alone from that would just be devastating.
Right. And, that is exactly the 2,000-year-old crisis we are stepping into today. We are looking at this absolute masterclass in human motivation, personal integrity, and, well, what money actually does to the human heart.
Yeah, it gets really revealing.
It does. Today, we're tearing into 2 Corinthians chapter 9, and we're using some deeply detailed historical and theological research from the Holman Study Bible and also the Nova Almeida Actualizada Study Bible.
Two really excellent resources.
Yeah. So the mission today is to figure out how ancient agricultural metaphors and massive looming social disaster in the first century apply directly to the wallet or the smartphone you're holding right now.
Because the background dynamics of this specific letter are, well, they're wild when you realize what's actually at stake here.
Set the scene for us.
Okay, so the Apostle Paul is currently up in the northern province of Macedonia. And for quite a while, he has been proudly talking up the believers down south in the region of Achaia, specifically the city of Corinth.
So he's basically been acting like their PR agent up north.
Exactly. He's been their hype man. Because about a year prior, the Corinthians made this deeply passionate commitment. They promised to gather a very significant financial offering to help the impoverished believers who were just really struggling back in Jerusalem.
Right.
And their initial zeal was so contagious that it actually sparked a broader movement. It inspired the Macedonian churches up north to step up and give as well.
Oh, wow. So the Corinthians were the catalyst for this entire regional relief effort.
Yeah, they were the spark. But now a year has passed, and the reality check finally arrives.
The bill comes due.
Exactly. Paul is preparing to travel down to Corinth, and he is sending his coworker Titus and a few other brothers ahead of him.
Okay, why send them ahead?
Because he needs to make sure that this promised gift is actually collected and ready to go.
Yeah.
I mean, if some of these Macedonians travel down with Paul and find the Corinthians entirely unprepared, it's a catastrophe.
Because he bragged about them.
Right. Both Paul, who completely vouched for them, and the Corinthians themselves would face massive public humiliation.
And we really have to understand how serious that humiliation was back then. Like, in the ancient Mediterranean world, culture was entirely built on this currency of honor and shame.
Oh, absolutely. It was everything.
It wasn't like today where, a public relations blunder just means you have a bad week on social media and then people forget. Honor was basically your credit score.
Yeah, it dictated your trade networks, your family's marriage prospects, even your physical safety in some cases.
So to fail to deliver on a publicized financial promise of this magnitude,
Yeah.
I mean, it would severely damage the reputation across the board.
It would signal to the entire region that this new Christian community in Corinth totally lacked basic integrity.
Think about the tension there. It's like launching a massive crowdfunding campaign or organizing a huge community 5K for a local hospital.
Right, a big public event.
Yeah, imagine you are the organizer and you announce to the whole city that a major corporate sponsor has promised this massive matching donation. You use that corporate promise to hype everyone up.
And it works. People start giving generously out of their own pockets based on that momentum.
Exactly. The charity event happens, the hospital staff is there on stage to receive the big novelty check, and that corporate sponsor is suddenly dodging your calls. They haven't actually put the money in the bank.
The trust evaporates instantly. And anyone associated with that sponsor looks either totally foolish or, worse, complicit in a scam.
So wait, I have to stop you there and look at Paul's actual motives here. Because if the stakes are that high, is Paul just utilizing a massive guilt trip?
That's a really fair question.
Like, is he essentially sending a letter saying, empty your pockets right now because you are going to make me look like an absolute idiot in front of my Macedonian friends? Because if he is, that's just a shakedown.
It definitely looks like a shakedown on the surface, but the study notes clarify the text beautifully here. Paul absolutely refuses to use coercion.
Really? Even with his own reputation on the line?
Yeah, he is appealing directly to their internal integrity, not their fear of embarrassment.
Hmm.
He uses very specific language, insisting that the offering must be a true blessing.
A blessing. What does that mean in this context?
In the original language, that word means an expression of genuine generosity and gratitude to God. And he explicitly contrasts this with an exaction.
An exaction, basically a tax.
Right, a tax. Something squeezed out of them through greed or pressure or a sense of awkward obligation. The study notes highlight this profound psychological reality. If they only give because Paul is standing in their living room tapping his foot, it completely stops being a genuine gift.
It just becomes an act of forced compliance.
Exactly. Paul knows that a coerced check might buy food for Jerusalem, sure, but it destroys the spiritual integrity of Corinth. He wants the money to validate the sincerity of their original enthusiastic promise.
Okay, that makes sense. And because Paul wants this to be a free will decision rather than a response to social panic, he makes this brilliant pivot in the text.
He really does. He completely drops the logistics of the collection.
Yeah, he stops talking about who is traveling where and how much they need to raise. Instead, he zooms way out and invokes the laws of nature.
Right. He brings in a proverb that would have been instantly recognizable to anyone living in an agrarian society. Verse 6, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows abundantly will also reap abundantly.
It's just the most basic law of the harvest. I mean, you cannot walk out to a massive empty field, plant 3 tiny tomato seeds, and expect to launch a commercial farming operation.
No. The output is directly tied to the input.
But the Holman notes point out something vital here about the actual heart condition of the person tossing those seeds into the dirt.
What do they highlight?
They say that Christian stewardship flows from a heart that loves God and loves its neighbor. It should never come from a sense of sad obligation because, and we've all heard this phrase a million times, God loves a cheerful giver.
Yeah, and the historical depth of that specific phrase is actually fascinating.
Oh, really? Tell me about that.
Well, the NAA notes trace this concept of joy in giving all the way back to the Old Testament, specifically to Proverbs 22.8 in the Septuagint.
Which is the ancient Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, right?
Correct. So Paul isn't just making up a catchy slogan for a fundraiser. He is tapping into an ancient foundational framework about how the Creator views human resources. The joy isn't just a nice bonus. It's a requirement for the transaction to mean anything spiritually.
Okay, but we need to tackle the elephant in the room regarding this specific agricultural metaphor.
I have a feeling I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, because whenever I hear the words sowing and reaping today, it usually comes from a guy in a tailored suit on television.
Right.
And he's telling me to plant a $1,000 seed into his ministry so God will give me a Bentley. People treat this text like it's a divine investment strategy.
A transactional guarantee.
Exactly. Like if I put $100 in the offering plate, is Paul saying God becomes an ATM who is legally obligated to give me a shiny new chariot or a bigger house?
The study notes dismantle that idea completely, thank goodness. The NWA notes firmly state that the promise of multiplying the fruits is not, I repeat, not to be understood in material terms for personal enrichment.
So it's a massive departure from the prosperity gospel.
Exactly. God is not a vending machine where a monetary input guarantees a luxury output.
But then, if the multiplication isn't cash, what is it? Because he does promise a harvest.
Right. The text says the increase is in the fruits of your righteousness.
Roots of righteousness.
Yeah. God multiplies their resources so they can continue to advance the message of the gospel and meet the physical needs of vulnerable people. It is a spiritual multiplication.
Okay, I see.
The cycle of generosity is designed to continue outward. God provides the excess so you can give it away again, not so you can build a bigger barn to hoard it all.
So if the payoff isn't a guaranteed life of luxury, what exactly is the nature of this provision? Because Paul uses a very specific, almost repetitive pattern of words in the very next sentence to answer that.
Oh, verse 8. It is linguistically stunning. It leaves absolutely no room for a mindset of scarcity.
It really doesn't. The Holman notes highlight this detail in the original Greek. Paul takes a specific root word for all, or every, and hammers it 4 separate times in a single thought.
4?
Yeah. He writes that God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that having all sufficiency in all things, you may abound in every good work.
Every.
It is entirely comprehensive.
He is systematically removing every possible excuse a person might have for holding back. And to explain the mechanics of how this provision actually works, Paul quotes Psalm 112.9.
What does that psalm say?
It describes the righteous person who distributes freely to the poor. Paul uses this imagery to remind them that God is the one who supplies the seed to the sower and the bread for food.
So he supplies the raw materials.
Yes, and the ultimate goal of God enriching you in everything, giving you that all-sufficiency, is precisely so you can be generous in everything.
Right.
You are meant to be a conduit, like a pipe that the water flows through, not a bucket that just catches it and sits there.
But what happens if you choose to just be the bucket? Like, what if the Corinthians say, thanks for the seed, Paul, we're going to keep it?
That's where things get uncomfortable.
Yeah, because there is a really heavy implication here in the earlier part of the text, back in verse 3. The NAA notes point out a specific Greek word used there.
Kinu, yeah.
It means proving false or proving empty.
Right.
The notes warn that if the Corinthians fail to give generously after all their big talk, it could be actual evidence that their faith wasn't genuine in the first place.
That's a terrifying thought.
It is. It can prove that their previous enthusiasm was totally empty and they had missed the point entirely.
It forces a hard look at what faith actually is.
So are we saying that a bank statement is essentially a spiritual lie detector test?
That's a great way to put it.
If we compare personal finances to a thermometer, is Paul arguing that how you spend your money is the ultimate proof of whether you actually believe what you say you believe?
The analysis in these study titles points to a resounding yes. The way a person handles their resources is a deeply theological issue. The notes explain that stewardship is a physical confession of the truth. It is incredibly easy to say you believe in a generous, self-sacrificing God.
Words are cheap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But to reflect that belief by actually sacrificing your own hard-earned resources for the sake of someone else, that requires actual trust.
It takes a completely abstract concept and drags it into physical reality. It proves the theology isn't just an intellectual exercise.
Because when you give, you are stating through your actions that you trust God to be the provider of your all-sufficiency. You are proving you believe the source won't run dry.
And once that physical proof happens, once that shift from ownership to stewardship takes place, it refuses to stay in a vacuum.
What do you mean?
Like, it doesn't just affect the person handing over the coins and the person receiving the bread. It physically alters how fractured communities interact, and it triggers this massive global chain reaction.
Oh, definitely. We see the scale of this reaction in verses 12 to 14. Paul elevates the entire concept of a financial donation by using two heavily loaded Greek words to describe it.
Which ones?
Diakonia and liturgia.
Okay, let's break those down because those are definitely not standard accounting terms.
Not at all. Let's look at liturgia. In the Greco-Roman world, this was a secular civic term. A liturgia was a public work.
Like a building project.
Yeah, exactly. It was when a wealthy citizen paid for a public bathhouse or a theater or a massive festival entirely out of their own pocket.
Wow.
And traditionally, the wealthy patron did this to gain immense public honor and have their name carved into the building.
So it was a transaction to buy status.
Yes. But Paul hijacks this secular economic term and applies it to the church. It's actually where we get the modern word liturgy.
Oh, liturgy. That makes sense.
Right. Paul is saying that this collection for the poor is not just a humanitarian relief effort, and it certainly isn't a way to buy status. It is an act of profound public worship.
So it does much more than just buy bread for the starving sets in Jerusalem.
Oh, much more.
So what does this new kind of liturgia accomplish? First, other congregations hear about the Corinthians' liberality, their open-handed generosity. But instead of praising the Corinthians and carving their names into a plaque, they glorify God for the Corinthians' obedience.
The credit goes vertically, not horizontally.
Yes. And furthermore, the recipients of the gift in Jerusalem are filled with deep affection, and they begin to pray fervently for the givers in Corinth.
And, the cultural context here makes that affection completely revolutionary.
How so?
You have Jewish believers in Jerusalem and Gentile believers in Corinth. Historically, these two groups were separated by a massive chasm of ethnic tension, strict dietary laws, and centuries of cultural resentment.
Right. They did not mix.
But this single act of generosity bridges that gap. It forces the recipients to look at outsiders, people they might have previously viewed with deep suspicion, through a lens of profound gratitude.
It's less like a random guy buying groceries for a stranger and more like, I don't know, die-hard Red Sox fans raising millions of dollars to save a community center in the Bronx.
That is a perfect analogy.
It completely shatters the tribal lines. You have these factions that historically despised each other, and suddenly the gesture is so overwhelmingly generous that the animosity just evaporates.
Right.
It turns horizontal generosity, simply helping the human being next to you, into vertical public worship.
And that vertical trajectory is exactly where Paul lands the plane in verse 15.
Yeah.
The underlying question of this entire text is, why does this system of generosity work?
Right.
Why are flawed, selfish human beings suddenly capable of this kind of bridge-building, cross-cultural sacrifice? Paul says it is exclusively because of God's inexpressible gift.
The NAA notes translate that as the indescribable gift, something that literally defies description.
Yeah, and when Paul calls it an indescribable gift, he's not talking about a warm feeling of community. He is talking about a person.
Jesus.
Exactly. The Holman notes explicitly identify this gift as the Son of God, Jesus. They cross-reference this directly to the most famous verse in the New Testament, John 3:1.
For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son.
Yes.
He gave. So the root of all of this, the actual engine driving the Corinthians to give to the Judeans, and the reason anyone should give today, is just a response. It's an echo.
God was the first giver. He sowed the ultimate seed of his Son into the world. Any act of human stewardship, any charity, any time we open our hands to help someone else, it is just a grateful reflection of that original grace.
And that completely dismantles any sense of superiority.
Totally.
It takes away the pride of looking in the mirror and thinking, look how generous and virtuous I am, and replaces it with, look at how much I've been freely given.
It is the ultimate paradigm shift. You realize you aren't the source of the wealth. You are simply the distributor of the master's resources.
Right.
And you can distribute them without fear because you finally understand that the master's supply is infinite.
For you listening, I want you to take a moment and evaluate the resources you have jurisdiction over right now. Not just the balance in your checking account, but your time, your specific professional skills, your energy, and the influence you have in your circles. It's all part of it.
Think about the agricultural reality we explored today.
The difference between the seed and the bread.
Exactly. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to mull over. What if you stopped looking at the resources in your life as bread, meant only for your own consumption, and started viewing them as seed entrusted to you to scatter for a much larger harvest of justice?
It completely redefines the purpose of everything you own.
It truly does. God blesses all of you listening.